If you think I'm the kind of girl who leaves her bedroom door unlocked at night, you're wrong. I don't trust the dark, not in this house, not with the way every sound seems to multiply after midnight, not with the memories that creep under my skin when the world is supposed to be sleeping. My name is Emily West, and for the record, I never asked for a stepbrother. I never asked for any of this. But here I am, 17, stuck between someone else's dreams and someone else's family, lying wide awake at 1:12 a.m. with a sinking feeling that tonight will be different. Maybe it's the way the rain hammers the window. Maybe it's the way my phone screen glows with messages I can't answer, friends who don't really know me, parents who argue behind closed doors. Maybe it's just the silence, that thick and hungry thing that presses on my chest whenever the house finally settles. All I know is, tonight feels sharp and unsteady, as if something is about to break. I hug my knees to my chest, tangled in blankets, pretending that if I hold still enough, nothing can reach me. Not the fear, not the loneliness, not even the ghost of the girl I used to be before my mom married him, before Lucas became the boy who lives just down the hall and never looks me in the eye. It's strange how you can share a roof with someone, hear their footsteps every morning, know the rhythm of their breathing through paper-thin walls, and still feel like strangers. Sometimes I wonder if Lucas even remembers the first day we met. Two kids shoved together by fate and a justice of the peace, neither of us smiling for the pictures. I don't think he does. He hardly talks at all. So when I hear footsteps, soft, hesitant, outside my bedroom door, my heart launches itself against my ribs. It's late, too late for anyone to be awake except me. I press myself deeper into the mattress, fingers gripping the blanket, breath caught somewhere in my throat. The door creaks. I stare, eyes wide and unblinking. The hallway light paints a long, thin shadow across the carpet. For a wild second, I imagine it's a ghost. My old life, come to haunt me, or maybe just the next bad thing in a string of things I haven't asked for. But it's not a ghost. It's Lucas. He stands there, framed by the dim light, looking rumpled and lost. His hair is a mess, and his hoodie hangs off his shoulders like armor he forgot to put on properly. He doesn't say a word. He just stares at me, and for the first time in months, I see something raw flicker across his face, something like fear, or maybe just exhaustion. I want to ask what he's doing, but the words die on my tongue. He steps inside, closing the door behind him with a click that sounds much too loud in the hush of night. He doesn't head for the chair, doesn't flop onto the bed. Instead, Lucas sinks down onto the floor, back against the wall, knees drawn up like he's trying to shrink himself small enough to disappear. For a while, we just sit there, me rigid and tense on the bed, him silent on the floor. I can hear the rain, the ticking of the clock, the hum of my own blood in my ears. The air is thick with questions I'm too afraid to ask. Lucas glances up at me, his eyes shadowed. "Sorry," he mumbles. "I just couldn't sleep." I nod, pretending that this is normal, pretending I don't feel 100 things at once. Confusion, worry, relief that it's not something worse. "You can stay," I say, and my voice sounds strange even to me. He nods, staring down at his hands. There's a long, stretching quiet. I try to remember the last time we spoke, really spoke, not just grunted greetings or muttered apologies at the dinner table. It's been weeks, maybe months, maybe forever. It's weird how two people can orbit the same pain and never collide. I know he hates the shouting, the tension, the way our parents pretend that nothing is wrong when everything is. I know he's got secrets. I've seen the way he shuts down, hides behind music and hoodies and headphones. I have my secrets too. We just never talk about them. Tonight, though, something is different. Maybe it's the storm. Maybe it's the way he looks at me, as if I'm the only anchor in a sea of chaos. I reach for my phone, think about texting. "Mom," but stop myself. What would I even say? Lucas is in my room. He looks like he's about to break. Should I send him away? I don't. Instead, I lean back against the headboard, watching him out of the corner of my eye. He's so quiet, I almost forget he's there. Until he speaks again, voice so low I have to strain to hear. Do you ever feel like you're not really here? He asks. The question catches me off guard. I swallow, unsure if I should answer. But something in his voice, so fragile, so real, makes me want to be honest. All the time, I whisper. He lets out a shaky breath, and for a heartbeat, the silence feels less heavy. Like maybe, just maybe, we're not alone after all. We don't say anything else. We don't need to. I watch the shadows crawl across the walls, listen to the storm roll over the roof, and try to believe that this moment, awkward, quiet, shared, is enough. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this is the part where something wild happens, where secrets spill out or hearts get broken or someone says something they can't take back. Maybe you're waiting for the twist, the reason my hands are shaking, the reason my door was unlocked. But the truth is, sometimes the most shocking thing isn't what happens. It's what doesn't. My stepbrother came into my room and I didn't say no. I didn't send him away. I just let him stay because I think we both needed it, maybe more than either of us will ever admit. So that's where we leave it. Two broken kids, sharing the darkness, daring the night to do its worst. I don't know what comes next. I know that for the first time in a long time, I'm not the only one awake in the dark, and maybe, for now, that's enough. If you've ever tried to pretend nothing happened, you'll know how heavy silence can get. By the time morning came, I almost convinced myself Lucas never entered my room at all, that maybe the storm invented him, or I'd dreamed the weight of his shadow on my wall. But the small, careful creak of my door closing at sunrise told me I wasn't alone. Not really. The world outside my blanket fortress seemed too bright, too sharp. I lay in bed listening to the distant clatter of pans, the hum of the fridge, the muffled radio in the kitchen. The house sounded normal, but nothing felt the same. My body wanted to stay under the covers forever, but the real world never waits for you to be ready. I found Lucas in the hallway. He was heading toward the bathroom? Hoodie zipped up high, hair wild like he hadn't slept at all. Our eyes met, just for a second, and I tried to find words. But he looked away first, shuffling past me, eyes fixed on the floor. I wanted to call out. Why did you come to me? Why not talk to Dad or just lock yourself away in your own room? Why me? But nothing came out. Just silence and the soft click of the bathroom door. Breakfast was the usual show. My mom poured coffee she wouldn't finish. My stepdad hid behind his laptop. Lucas sat across from me picking at toast. We barely made eye contact. Mom asked about homework and I lied. Dad mentioned a parent-teacher night and Lucas pretended not to hear. I stared at the cereal swirling in my bowl, every crunch echoing in my ears. The words from last night, do you ever feel like you're not really here? Wouldn't leave me alone. School was a different kind of storm. My best friend Molly cornered me at my locker, eyes wide. Are you coming to the assembly tonight? Or is your family still, awkward? Her tone was light, teasing, but the look she gave me was sharp. I shrugged. It's fine. She didn't believe me. No one ever does. I guess I don't even believe myself. Lunchtime, and the whispers started up again, about my weird family, about how my mom and Lucas's dad got married so fast, about Lucas and me, always so distant, never quite fitting in. People stared like we were a science project gone wrong. Then I heard the familiar sneer, "Hey West, what's it like playing house with your stepbro?" I froze, every muscle tight. I didn't look up. I'd learned it was safer that way, but then a voice cut through the cafeteria noise, sharp and unexpected. "Leave her alone." I blinked. Lucas stood behind me, jaw clenched, eyes burning holes in the bullies from across the table. He didn't yell, just glared, the way only someone on the edge can. The table went quiet. One of the guys snickered, but no one pushed it further. Lucas didn't look at me. He just nodded to the empty seat beside me, then sat, arms folded, face hard. We didn't say a word. Not while the others watched, not while the lunchroom buzzed around us like nothing had happened. But I felt it. A thread pulled tight between us, something unspoken and urgent. After school, I found myself drifting home slowly, shoes scuffing the pavement, the wind tugging at my sleeves. I didn't want to go back. Not to the quiet, not to the house that suddenly felt too small for the things we weren't saying. When I finally stepped inside, the first thing I saw was Lucas's backpack dumped by the stairs. The second was Lucas himself, standing by my bedroom door, hands stuffed into his pockets. He didn't knock. He didn't have to. I closed the door behind us. The room felt even smaller than last night. He didn't sit on the floor this time. He stood by the window, staring at the clouds gathering again. His voice was low. "You're not going to tell, right?" I shook my head. "No, I wouldn't." His shoulders dropped a little. "Good." I watched him, trying to untangle the storm of thoughts running through my mind. Why had he come to my room? Why now, after months of almost nothing? Why me? I couldn't take it anymore. "Lucas," I said quietly, "why did you come to me last night?" He flinched, just a little, but didn't look away from the window. I didn't know where else to go. His voice was so soft I almost missed it. He turned, arms crossed, face tight. "I didn't want to wake Dad. He gets angry. And your mom, she worries too much. I just needed—" He trailed off, words stuck in his throat. I tried to fill the silence. "You needed someone." He nodded. "Yeah, I guess." For a moment, I just watched him. I thought about every night I'd hidden under my blanket, wishing someone would notice I was scared, wishing I didn't have to be so alone. How many times had I nearly walked down the hall to his room, only to lose my nerve? It was strange, hearing him say out loud the thing I'd always felt, that we're all just looking for a place to go when the dark gets too heavy. He cleared his throat awkward. You're easy to be around. You don't ask a lot of questions." I almost laughed. "That's because I never know what to say." He cracked a small, tired smile. "Same." The tension in my chest loosened, just a little. The room wasn't so heavy now. Lucas glanced at me, eyes honest for once. "It's not your fault, you—" "No. The way things are. You didn't make this mess." I wanted to believe him. Maybe I almost did. He looked away, then sat down on the edge of my bed, hands twisting in his lap. "Do you ever wish you could go back? Before all of this?" All the time, I thought. But I just nodded. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The sky outside turned bruised and gray, and I wondered if it was possible to miss a person while they're still in the same room. Or to finally see them, after months of pretending you're strangers. Lucas broke the silence first. "I used to think you hated me." The words stung, more than I expected. "I don't. I never did." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Good, because I think I need you right now. More than I want to admit." Something inside me shifted. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was relief. For the first time, I let myself admit that I needed him too. We sat together, the sky outside darkening by the minute. We didn't hug. We didn't touch. We just sat, breathing the same air, sharing the same quiet. For a little while, that was enough. When the first raindrop hit the window, Lucas glanced over at me, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Can I stay? Just for a while?" I nodded. "Yeah, you can." And just like that, the silence between us changed. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was something we could share. Maybe that was all either of us had really needed. It's a strange thing, learning to trust someone you've lived with for nearly 2 years and barely spoken to. For Lucas and me, trust crept in quietly, like the night itself stealing across the floor, settling in the quiet corners we'd always ignored. We never talked about what happened that second night. Not to Mom, not to Dad, and certainly not to each other in the daylight. But after that, something shifted. The next night, Lucas knocked softly on my door before coming in. No words, just the soft rhythm of his knuckles against wood, barely more than a whisper. I let him in. I didn't need to ask why. I could see it in his eyes. He looked even more tired than before, like he'd been fighting a battle no one else could see. We didn't turn on the light. Instead, we sat cross-legged on the floor, backs pressed to opposite walls, letting the glow from the street lamp outside fill the room with half shadows. Neither of us wanted to break the spell. The air felt different, charged, almost electric, but not the scary kind. The kind that told you something real was about to happen. For a while, we just listened to the city. The distant whine of sirens, the steady beat of rain on the window, the low rumble of a train miles away. The house around us was silent, our parents locked in their separate worlds. But here, in this pocket of darkness, I could breathe. Lucas spoke first, voice rough but steady. Do you ever wish you could run away? I hesitated. I'd thought about it more than I'd ever admit, packing a bag, climbing out the window, disappearing into the night. But saying it out loud made it feel dangerous, like inviting disaster. Sometimes, I answered, but I'm not brave enough. He nodded, rubbing his hands over his knees. Me neither. That was the beginning. A confession so small it barely counted. But it was enough to make the walls between us crack, just a little. I pulled at the edge of my blanket, twisting the fabric in my hands. What would you do if you could leave? He looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes. I don't know. Go somewhere quiet. Somewhere no one knows who I am. His words were quiet, but there was a yearning in them that made my chest ache. Maybe we could both go, I whispered, almost afraid of my own boldness. Start over. Lucas smiled, a real smile this time. It was small, but it was there. Yeah, maybe. The conversation drifted, circling around school, the bullies in the cafeteria, teachers who never seemed to notice when something was wrong. Lucas admitted to failing a class, math, of course, and hiding the letter from his dad. I told him about the anxiety that knotted in my stomach every time I heard raised voices in the kitchen. For the first time, it felt safe to say these things out loud. To say I'm scared or I don't know what to do without worrying, the other person would laugh or look away. I could feel the weight I'd been carrying begin to shift, just a little, as if sharing it made it lighter. At some point, I realized I was crying. Not the ugly, heaving sobs that leave you gasping, but silent tears that slid down my cheeks and pooled on my knees. Lucas didn't say anything. He just sat with me, the way you do when you know you can't fix it, but you don't. Want someone to be alone in their pain? I wiped my face on my sleeve, embarrassed. Sorry, I'm a mess. He shook his head, his own eyes shining in the half-light. You're not. I get it. Sometimes I just want to scream, you know? But if I do, someone's going to hear. Someone's always listening. We fell quiet again. The room felt smaller but warmer. There was a thump from somewhere in the house. Dad moving around in the kitchen, probably searching for a midnight snack. Lucas tensed, shoulders tight, but I shook my head. It's just him. He won't come. In here. He nodded, but I could see the doubt on his face. The fear. I recognized it. I lived with it too. After a while, Lucas leaned back against the wall, stretching his legs out in front of him. Can I tell you something? His voice was barely above a whisper. I nodded, bracing myself. When my mom left, he started, eyes fixed on the carpet. I thought it was my fault. I kept thinking if I'd been a better son, maybe she would have stayed, or maybe Dad wouldn't have been so angry all the time. I know it's stupid, but... He trailed off, lost in his own memories. I didn't know what to say, so I did the only thing I could. I reached across the space between us and touched his hand just for a second. Not holding, not clinging, just letting him know he wasn't invisible. He didn't pull away. You know it's not your fault, right? I said quietly. He shrugged. Sometimes it feels like everything is somehow. We sat in the silence, my hand still resting beside his. There was a comfort in the nearness, a way the darkness made it easier to be honest. Want to hear something dumb? I asked, trying to lighten the mood. He looked at me, curiosity winning over sadness. Sure. When I was 12, I thought if I wished hard enough on the first star I saw, my real dad would come back. I used to keep the window open all night, just in case. Lucas smiled again, sad but understanding. I used to do that too, for my mom. I let out a shaky laugh. We're both pretty messed up, huh? He grinned, a real spark in his eyes. Guess so. But at least we're not alone. We stayed like that, sharing stories in the dark until exhaustion won and the night softened. At some point, Lucas fell asleep, curled up with his head on my old beanbag chair. I watched him for a moment, listening to his slow, even breathing. For once, he looked peaceful, the weight on his shoulders set down for just a little while. Wanted to hold on to the feeling forever, the strange, fragile safety of not being alone. I wondered if it could last, or if the morning would steal it away like everything else good in our lives. Before I drifted off, I promised myself something. If Lucas ever needed me again, I wouldn't say no. Not ever. The world outside our window kept turning, storms moving on, new shadows falling. But inside that small, messy room, two lost kids were learning to trust the dark together. And in that moment, it was enough. The calm we'd built in those late-night talks was delicate, like spun glass, beautiful but always at risk of shattering. I guess I should have known it couldn't last forever. Around our little island of honesty, the world kept spinning, and the grown-ups' problems crept. Closer every day. The tension in the house that week was worse than usual. You could feel it in the way the doors slammed, in the quick, sharp footsteps down the hall. Dad was snapping more than talking. Mom moved around like she was dodging invisible punches. I tried to drown it all out with music, but the walls here were thin. Secrets didn't stay secrets for long. That Friday night, a thunderstorm rolled over the city, heavy with the promise of something breaking. I sat at my desk pretending to study, rain streaking down the window, the air close and humid. I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for a message from Lucas. He hadn't come by in 2 days. I'd started to miss him, not just the quiet company, but the feeling of not having to pretend I was okay. Downstairs, voices rose. At first, it was the usual. Mom asking Dad if he'd paid the water bill, Dad grumbling about work, plates clattering a little too hard in the sink. I tried to tune it out. But then the shouting started. Real shouting. Ugly and sharp, bouncing off every wall in the house. I heard Lucas's door slam. Then the sound of his footsteps, fast and angry, down the hallway. Without thinking, I crossed the room and yanked open my own door. The noise from below echoed up the stairs, the words too tangled to make out but full of blame and hurt. Lucas was standing at the top of the stairs, fists clenched at his sides. His face was pale, jaw set. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Something passed between us. A silent, desperate plea. We didn't have to say it out loud. I can't do this alone. Not tonight. He moved first, slipping into my room, and I followed, shutting the door gently behind us. Even with the storm outside, even with the yelling, my room felt like the eye of a hurricane, tense and eerily quiet. Lucas paced, unable to sit. They never stop, he muttered, voice thick. Every night it's something else. It's like they don't even remember we're here. I nodded, helpless. They're just so angry. All the time. He turned to me, and I saw fear in his eyes, a kind of helpless, cornered fear I knew too well. What if they split up? What happens to us? I didn't have an answer. The thought of being separated again, of losing the one person who finally understood me, made my stomach twist. I sat on the bed, knees pulled to my chest, wishing I could make it all stop. The shouting downstairs climbed higher. Glass broke. Mom's voice, frantic and raw, echoed up the stairwell. Lucas sank to the floor, head in his hands, breathing fast and shallow. I watched, panic prickling at the edges of my mind. Lucas? I said gently, but he didn't look up. His breath was coming in little gasps, I can't do this. I dropped to the floor beside him, trying to remember everything I'd ever read about panic attacks. I put a hand on his shoulder, steady but light. Hey, you're okay. You're safe up here. Just breathe with me, okay? He squeezed his eyes shut, struggling to match my breathing. I counted out loud, soft and steady, letting my voice anchor him. In, 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. Slowly, his breathing calmed. His hands were still shaking, but his eyes opened, focusing on me like I was a lifeline. I hate this, he whispered. I hate feeling so weak. You're not weak, I said, fiercer than I meant to. You're here. That counts for something. He gave a shaky laugh that was almost a sob. You sound like a therapist. I shrugged, relief mixing with the leftover fear. You'd know if I was a therapist. I'd be charging you for this. He smiled, just a little, and for a second the storm didn't seem so close. The yelling downstairs faded to muffled sobs. I heard Dad stomping through the living room, keys jangling. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the pictures on the walls. Silence. Then Mom's footsteps on the stairs, soft and slow. I pressed my back against the bed, bracing myself. Lucas stared at the door, eyes wide. But she didn't come in. Her footsteps moved past, into the bathroom, the door closing quietly behind her. We sat in the hush, both shaking, both staring at the cracks in the ceiling. I realized I was holding Lucas's hand, our fingers tangled in a desperate grip. Neither of us let go. After a long time, Lucas spoke. What if this is it? What if we have to choose who to live with, where to go? The idea made my skin crawl. I don't want to choose. I just want things to stop falling apart. He leaned his head against my shoulder, just for a moment, and the gesture felt like a shield against everything waiting outside my door. I squeezed his hand. We'll figure it out. If everything goes to hell, we'll run away together. We'll hide in the library or the train station or wherever no one will find us. He nodded, eyes distant. Promise? Promise, I whispered. We sat like that for a while, listening to the thunder rumbling in the distance, the rain hammering the glass. I wanted to freeze the moment, two broken kids in a broken house holding on to each other because there was nothing else left. Eventually, Lucas spoke again, his voice steadier. We need a plan, just in case. I nodded, relief mingling with a flicker of hope. Tomorrow. We'll make one tomorrow. He nodded, letting go of my hand at last. I missed the contact immediately, the grounding certainty that at least one thing in my world wasn't about to break. The storm outside kept raging, but in my room for a little while, we found our own kind of quiet. Not peace, never that, but something close enough to get us through the night. As I crawled back into bed, Lucas settled on the floor, pulling a blanket over himself. I watched him until his breathing slowed, steady and even. My chest still ached from the fear, but beneath it was something else, something like courage. If our family was falling apart, then maybe all we could do was hold on to each other. Maybe that was enough. When I finally drifted off, the thunder was softer, the world outside blurred by rain. Tomorrow would come with new problems, new decisions. But for tonight, I wasn't alone. For tonight, I had someone who understood. And sometimes, that's the only thing that keeps you going. If someone had told me a month ago that Lucas and I would be this close, I'd have laughed. I'd have said that nothing could break through. The wall between us. Not after all the months of silence. Not after all the things our parents did and didn't say. But the night of the storm changed everything. After that, something in both of us refused to go back to how it was before. The next morning, the house felt heavy and hollow. The storm had moved on, but its damage lingered. Branches littered the yard, water pooled on the windowsills, and our parents moved through the kitchen with tired, red-rimmed eyes. They spoke in soft, brittle voices. I caught Mom glancing at Lucas and me more than once, her gaze lingering a little longer than usual. as if she was trying to see us for the first time in months. Lucas and I didn't talk much at breakfast. We didn't have to. Something had shifted, and it was as clear as the light breaking through the clouds outside. There was a calm, a kind of defiance in the way we moved around each other, almost like we'd silently decided that no matter what happened with our parents, we wouldn't let each other down. After breakfast, Dad disappeared into his office and Mom went back to bed, claiming a headache. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Lucas found me in my room, hunched over my desk pretending to do homework. He didn't bother with small talk. He just sat on the bed, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. "So," he said after a long moment, "we need that plan." Nodded. "Yeah. I've been thinking about it." We spent the next hour mapping out every possibility. If they split up, who would we go with? Could we convince them to let us stay together? Would we have to choose sides? It was terrifying, talking about it out loud, but it was also freeing. With each possibility we faced, I felt a little less powerless, a little less trapped by circumstances I couldn't control. At some point, we ended up laughing, really laughing, at the idea of running away to Canada and living in a cabin with nothing but a dog, a stack of comic books, and canned beans. The image was so ridiculous it broke the tension just for a moment. But beneath the jokes, the fear remained. What if we really did have to fend for ourselves? We decided that, whatever happened, we'd have each other's backs. We'd fight for our place in each other's lives, no matter what the adults decided. For the first time since the wedding, it felt like the two of us were a team, not just two broken kids thrown together by chance. A few days later, the fallout finally arrived. Our parents called a family meeting in the living room. Lucas and I sat side by side on the couch, arms brushing, and waited for the verdict. The grown-ups looked tired, defeated, and scared. "We've been talking," Mom started, voice trembling, "and we know things haven't been easy for you. For either of you." Dad cleared his throat. We're not sure what's going to happen between us, but we promise, no matter what, we'll figure out what's best for you two." Lucas tensed. I squeezed his hand beneath the cushion, grounding both of us. Mom continued, tears gathering in her eyes. "We just want you to know, you're not invisible. We see you. We know you've been trying so hard to be strong, and we're sorry for all the times we made you feel like you had to do it alone." There was a silence so deep it rang in my ears. Dad looked at us, softer than I'd ever seen him. "You're family, no matter what. And we'll do everything we can to make sure you stay together, if that's what you want." I almost couldn't believe it. I glanced at Lucas, saw the same shock and hope in his face that I felt in mine. "We want to stay together," I said, voice steady. Lucas nodded, stronger than I'd ever seen him. "We're better together. We just are." The grown-ups looked at each other, relief and sadness written all over their faces. For a moment, I wondered if they might try to fix things after all. The meeting ended with promises. Some spoken, some silent. Nothing was resolved, not really. But something had changed. Our voices were heard. Our place was claimed. That night, Lucas knocked on my door again. I didn't hesitate. I let him in. We sat cross-legged on the floor, just like before. This time, though, there was no darkness pressing in. The air felt clearer. We talked about everything and nothing, about school, about dreams, about all the tiny moments that add up to a life. Eventually, Lucas grew quiet. He looked at me, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "You know, I used to think I was alone, even with you in the house. I thought no one could ever really understand what it's like being stuck in the middle, not belonging anywhere." I nodded. "Me too." He smiled, small, real. "But I was wrong. I've got you. And I'm not letting go." I smiled back, a lump in my throat. "Same." We didn't need any more words. We sat in companionable silence, the night outside calm for once. The storm had passed, but what we'd built in its wake was stronger than anything that had come before. Sometimes I think about how easily things could have gone another way, how I might have locked my door, How Lucas might have suffered in silence forever. But that's not how our story ended. When he came into my room that night, I couldn't say no, and I'm glad I didn't. In the end, that's what saved us. Not a miracle. Not the adults fixing everything. Just two scared kids refusing to let go of each other, no matter how many storms crashed around them. So if you're waiting for the big twist, the dramatic betrayal, or the perfect happy ending, you won't find it here. Life isn't neat like that. What you'll find is this: hope, cracked and battered, shining through the cracks. The kind of hope you only find when you stop pretending and start holding on. Lucas came into my room and everything changed. We were never really alone. Not then, not now, not ever. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.